Good day everyone, and welcome to the SUSE Linux Enterprise Server training. This training will be workshop based. In other words, it will be more practical and hands-on. My name is Jaco Foster and I'm a SUSE certified training engineer for SAP Tech, and I will be your host for the next couple of days. A huge welcome to everyone joining us for the training, locally and abroad. This training course is designed for everyone. Here you will learn Linux the easy way, but those with IT experience will find it easier to follow in the beginning. This training is based on the SLE 201 version 12 training course, and it is only a summarized version of the actual training. We will have a good balance between theory and practical experience in this training. I still trust when the training is complete, you will feel empowered and confident to navigate the SUSE Linux Enterprise Server. Should you wish to have more information on the full training course, you may navigate to this link displayed on your screen: training.suse.com/courses/SLE 201 version 12. These sessions will be around 1 hour in length daily for the next 2 weeks, Monday to Friday, and even on public holidays. In total, we will be busy for around about 10 hours. I trust everyone has received the instructions sent to your email. If you have not yet received the instructions, kindly send me an email to suse@sabttech.com. We will attend to these emails after the training. This training is mainly workshop based, and it will be good if you're able to follow me step by step as I go through the practical. Should you wish only to listen and not to follow step by step, you are also welcome. During the live streaming, I will not be answering any questions on the chat window. However, one of my colleagues will be monitoring the chat window and answer topic-related questions. It will be best if you could make note of your questions and rather ask them at the end of each session. For even better, you can send me an email to suse@sabttech.com. So, just a quick look at our agenda. Some of the topics that we'll be covering is the SUSE Linux flavors, the GUI logon and navigation, our Linux file types, our FHS, our file system hierarchy standard, then file permissions, the cell environment, navigating with the CLI, the command line interface. Then we'll be looking at YAST and its functions, then user management, network management, administration basics. Then we'll go into RPM and libzip, which is known as zipper. Then we'll look at process scheduling and a few other topics. So next, let's look at the recommended requirements. The software that we'll be using is our VMware Workstation 15 player. In my instructional guide, we gave you links to download the pre-configured virtual machine images. By now, you should have extracted these images and added them to your VM player. So the computers with virtualization and hypervisor technologies are required, and you had to enable the technology within your BIOS. In my guide, I've sent you a few links where you can follow on how to enable it if you have not done so already. We require a computer with a processor of an i3 and stronger, or even an AMD and Athlon and stronger. RAM, 4 gigs is our minimum, and it should work fine, but we still recommend 8 gigabytes of RAM. Then hard drive space, 40 gigs should be adequate as well. And if you're able to run your virtual machines from a SSD or a NVMe, you will have a far better experience. Then 2 screens are recommended for this training, so you can see the live screen and also follow me on the second screen on your own practical virtual machines. 1 screen should also do. You just need to rearrange your screens to be able to see the live streaming and also to perform your own practical. then a stable internet connection for live streaming is essential, so you don't miss any of the instructions or the trainings. Then your virtual machine specifications. This is per virtual machine. So each virtual machine needs one processor and 1 gig of RAM. You will see on the virtual machines we've only allocated 768 megabytes of RAM and not a full 1 gig. And then our hard drives that we will add is 2 10 gig virtual drives, which totals 20 gigs. So this, and then 1 LAN interface. So in total, this is for one machine. So in total, we'll have 40 gigs of usage on your drive, with all the extraction softwares and the ISO that you had to download from SUSE. Before we continue, let's quickly start up our VMware Workstation 15 player. So if you have followed my instructions on my guide, you will see that your layout will look something similar to this. We've got our VMware Workstation player. We've got our 2 servers loaded and listed. And all we have to do is now highlight the server we want to start and press the Play Virtual Machine button. Once the server starts up, you will see if you click in the server screen, it will capture your mouse and keyboard. Now, to release your mouse and keyboard, you need to press the Ctrl and Alt buttons together, and that will release the focus of the mouse and keyboard, so you can utilize it back on your desktop. Once you have booted up your server and you get to this screen, please leave it at this screen, for we will work with this a little later in the course and to run through the GUI interface. So I'm going to minimize this screen quickly, and then I'm going to give you an idea on what it should look like. Great, here is my VM player. So on my VM player, I have 2 servers loaded, server 1 and server 2. All I'm going to do now is I'm going to press the Play Virtual Machine button. So while this starts up, I'm going to click on this screen. So here I can interrupt the normal boot process by using the arrow keys. You can start up with the advanced options, or we can start up with the normal boot procedure. So I'm going to hit enter on this. If you have not interrupted this, then it would have booted up by now. So let me press enter. Now I cannot move my mouse inside a window. So if I press the Ctrl and Alt keys, then it releases my mouse and my keyboard. So now I can utilize it. Until I click in it again, it's stuck. Ctrl Alt releases it. Up until the point where it boots up completely to this stage, then your mouse and your normal keyboard are now integrated with your operating system. So please leave this screen at this position right now, and we're going to continue with the course. Yes, just leave it like this. Thank you. Next up, let's look at our SUSE Linux flavors. So SUSE Linux has 2 primary types of Linux, which is our OpenSUSE and our Enterprise SUSE. First up, let's look at OpenSUSE. Now, OpenSUSE is an open source project where SUSE is the primary contributor to this project. There are currently 2 releases of OpenSUSE. The one is OpenSUSE Leap, and the other is OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. So the differences between the 2, let's read through the slides, is the OpenSUSE Leap. It's got major releases which matches the SUSE Linux Enterprise Server, the SLES releases. For example, your SUSE Leap will run on 15, then our SLES will also run on version 15. Then with minor releases, we match the service pack level for SLES. For example, if SLES was running on SP1, then we would also have our SUSE Leap running on 15.1. Then this is mainly targeted for developers and power users who prefer to have a tested and completely stable version of SUSE. OpenSUSE is not meant to be used on enterprise level. Then we look at OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. This is more for a person who wants the latest and greatest. So with OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, we've got a rolling release Linux distribution. This means new versions of individual packages are made available as soon as they are stabilized by the OpenSUSE community. Then we receive security updates, bug fixes, and new features as soon as they are integrated and tested by the OpenSUSE community. Then it's targeted at users who want to have the latest software package version. So to give you a quick example of the product icons, you'll see the leap looks like that, and your tumbleweed is this little infinity sign. If you need more information with regards to the OpenSUSE product, then you can go to https://www.opensuse.org. So next, let's have a look at the relationship between OpenSUSE and the SLES, SUSE Linux Enterprise Server. Here's an example on the left-hand side. You will see we've got OpenSUSE Leap with its different versions, major and minor releases. The same goes with the Tumbleweed. So the relationship between all of them is they are using the same SUSE Linux Enterprise Common Code Base. So when we look at SUSE Linux Enterprise, it's designed to run on IBM System Z, IBM Power, and our Intel-based systems. Then some flavors of SUSE Linux Enterprise. We have the SUSE Linux Enterprise Server, which is known as SLES. And then we have the SUSE Linux Enterprise Desktop, which is known as SLED. So all of them runs on a SUSE Linux Enterprise product set. Then next up, let's have a look at extending our SUSE Linux Enterprise Server. So some extensions which are available is geo-clustering. That is if we want to extend our functionality globally and run several instances as a single instance of SLES. Then we've got our high availability extension. That is to keep our business running should a server fail. Our real-time extension is to bring down latency. Our software development kit, that's for our software developers. And then plenty other modules for, just to name a few, SLES for SAP, our live patching, and just so many more. Let's quickly recap on the SUSE Linux flavors. So we've got our OpenSUSE Leap, we've got our OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, then we've got our OpenSUSE Desktop, and then we've got SUSE Linux Enterprise Server. Our extensions that we have looked at was our high availability, geo-clustering, real-time and software development kits. Then some modules, SLES for SAP, live patching, and just a few extras. Should you wish to have some more information, you can go to www.suse.com and just go click on the products link. So next we're going to look at the SLES maintenance model. So the SLES maintenance model, let's explain this to you quickly when it comes to a major release. So a major release are supported for a total of 13 years. So when we have our Go Live version, the Go Live version is supported for 18 months from date of release. Then we aim to have our first service pack released within the first year of the Go Live version. Now each service pack is then supported for a further 2 years. Then you are welcome to extend your service offering from SUSE by purchasing the long-term service pack support, the LTSS, and that can give you an additional 3 years of support from SUSE on the specific service pack. Now, every 18 months from the very first service pack, you will see year 1 and the half of year 3, we attempt to release to our next service pack. And this service pack, and in turn, will still be supported for 2 years going on, and so forth. So, our last service pack will be supported up until a 10-year lifespan. So it is possible for you to stay on Service Pack 1 and purchase the long-term Service Pack support and only decide to move over to Service Pack 4 6 months prior to the ending of your long-term support pack. Then you can run this last service pack for a couple of years, up until 10 years, and then you can purchase an additional long-term service pack support from SUSE to extend your complete product range and support for the major release up until 13 years. So that's quite long if you look at a single major release support time. If we look at our software subscriptions, and we're going to read up on what's the SUSE Linux Enterprise subscription requirements. So it's only available, or updates are only available to customers with a current SUSE Linux Enterprise subscription. So should you not have a subscription, you are not able to update your SUSE Linux Enterprise edition. Then subscriptions are based on physical machines, not necessarily virtual machines. Then we use the subscription management tool known as the SMT server to apply minor patches for free. So next up, we are going to look at navigating the graphical user interface, also known as the GUI. So let's bring up our server, which we started up a little earlier. So here we see our landing page or our user login page. So on the top left hand side, we can see our current host name for our system. In this case, it's named server 1. If we click on server 1, it will give us the version of the operating system. In this case, it's our SUSE Linux Enterprise Server 12 with Service Pack 4. In the middle, where we've got our time, here we've got our little notification bar where any notifications will appear or up and coming events. Then we've got our accessibility options, which we can enable before logging in. Then on the right hand side, we've got our volume control, and we can manage the system's power functionality here. If you press the on button, it would like to switch off the computer because it's already switched on. And you can choose restart or power off. In this case, we can hit cancel because we want to log into the system. Then we've got our listed users. In this case, we've got Tux listed here. There's also an option called not listed. Let's first click on the not listed option. So on not listed, you can type the username of the user you would like to log in. In this case, we can type in root. We will not be logging in with root on this system. We will always switch to the root user later on. So you can do it here. So in my setup guide, I've given you the password for root as well as the Tux user. So let's go and click cancel to go back to the login page. So here we've got the Tux user. Let's click on Tux. And just before we type the Tux password, we are going to look at this little gear over here. In this gear, we have a few options of the window managers, our look and feel, what the landing page or the desktop environment should look like. So we've got an option between GNOME Classic, little board legacy systems use the ICE Windows Manager. We can utilize that, or we can stick with the SUSE Linux Enterprise Classic view, which is my favorite. So I click on that, and let's type in the password and sign into our system. The password we're going to use is Linux, all lowercase. Take note that everything within Linux is case sensitive except for our search within a graphical interface. We'll get to that a little later. So once you've typed in a password Linux, all lowercase, click sign in. So now we've entered our desktop environment. In our desktop environment, this is our SUSE Linux Enterprise Classic desktop view. So let's see, what do we have here. Here we've got an explorer, a file explorer, which we can open, and our trash bin, which all our deleted files will go in. So before we start, let's start with a right click. What does right click do? A right click gives us an option on this screen to create a new folder. Let's do so. Let's create a new folder, and we call this training. And then we hit either enter or the create button at the top. We can move around our folders as we wish, and we can put them where we'd like. Then let's see what else right click can do. We can later on paste. We can select everything. We can select all the icons to be aligned. We can organize the desktop by name to put them in an alphabetical order. We can change our background, and we can open the terminal. So the terminal we're going to use quite a little later on. So let's just close that down, go back to our desktop. Now let's see what happens if we right click on training. So if we right click on training, it gives us quite a few extra options. Here we can either open the folder in a new tab or a new window. We can open it with another application, should there be another application supporting this. We can also cut and paste, copy, and we can also move this folder to a different location. So should we know where we want to have it moved, we can do so. So let's go cancel, and then we can also resize the icon. For if you would like to have a bigger size icon, we can do so. To reset that, right click again on it and just restore the icon to the original size. So if we right click on it again, we can compress the folder and its contents. We can open up terminal. Then we've got some sharing options which we can utilize for this specific folder. Here we can share this folder, and we can also allow other guests to maintain this folder. Once you're ready, you can create it. Hit cancel, and then we've got a properties function where we can see what's the current disk space. So before we carry on with the properties, just close this down quickly, and we go right click on it again and go rename the folder. Let's go to the front and we add it as Linux training. Then you can hit enter or press the rename button. So now we have Linux training. Let's go right click on it again and we go to properties. So currently there's no contents on it, and it shows us the parent folder and where it is currently located. So this folder is located under /home/tux and desktop. This folder is located on the desktop or within the desktop folder. Our free space for this current mount is 5.2 gigabytes. Let's go have a look at our permissions. Here we can change the access permissions to this specific folders, and we can change the groups and other groups who can have access or change files within this folder. Then we've got a change permissions for enclosed files. That means everything within this folder. How should these files be worked with or added permissions to them. Here you can change those permissions. We'll get to security a little later in our course. Then we've got the sharing option again, and here we can share the folder. But take note, at the bottom there's an issue. The share name is too long. Now, as I explained to you previously, that everything is case sensitive, but what I didn't tell you is that Linux do not like spaces. So the moment there's a space, it sees this as a separate command. So when we work with command line, everything followed by a space is a separate command or a separate option. So we must either remove the space or put an underscore in it should we like to share this. Now we're not going to create a share, just wanted to show you that now it doesn't give us an direct error. So we're not going to create a share, just going to untick it and just hit the X button to close this down. Good. So next, let's have a look at our application menu. So once we click on the application menu, what options do we have? We've got the accessories menu with a files and a text editor. So let's go to the files option. Once we open up files, it navigates to the current home folder, current user's home folder. In the current user's home folder, we've got our desktop documents, downloads, music, pictures, and videos. You get the idea. Let's go into the desktop. In our desktop, here we have our training folder which we have created. So what we can do from this is we can hit a home button to go back to our current view. So what else do we have here? On the top left corner, we've got like a little option bar to maintain our Explorer window. Here we can create a new window. We can enable the sidebar or disable the sidebar. Then we've got some preferences which we can look at to change the behavior, look and feel of the Explorer window as a files window. Behavior, list columns, and the search preview. There's a few settings you can go and play with at the later stage. Let's close that down. Let's go press the button again. Then we've got some handy keyboard shortcuts. Those are nice shortcuts. As you can see, is that it doesn't fit properly within my view. So I'm just going to move it up a little bit and see if I can drag my display a little bigger. Now this is a very handy feature of the VMware Workstation player. We will go and set the resolution manually shortly, so we will have a recommended size we can work with. So you've got a few handy shortcuts which you can go through and learn. In this case, I'm just going to close it down. It looks like I need to drag it up some more. There's my X, so I'm going to hit the X button on that. And then what else do we have? Then we've got our help. So once you go into help, it will give you some insight on the specific window and what you can do and some informative reading. This you can do at your own pace. Then we've got our about. About will just tell about more about the files application. Then lastly, we can quit the window from here. Then what else do we have at the top? Here we can navigate between our previous sections and where we were and going back to certain functions or levels. We can click here directly to go back to the desktop as well. And as this bar fills up, we can navigate and scroll through this bar as it becomes more fuller. Then we've got our search button over here. Now our search button, we just go back to home. Our search here is not case sensitive. So I'm going to search for training in lowercase. And this is basically the only thing which is not case sensitive within Linux. Then we've got our view arrangements, how we want to view our icons. Let's go back to home quickly and we go click on this little button over here. We can change how our view and our layout is arranged. Okay, there's a few other options which you can play with. And then we've got an options window over here where we can create a new folder, new tab, and we can undo our last actions. This is very similar to right-clicking. So if we right-click there, but we do not have our last action undo on a right-click, it's available from this option menu where we can undo our last action. Alright, then we've got our minimize functionality where we can minimize our screen, bring it back up again. We can restore it to a smaller manageable size, or we can quit it from here. Just going to maximize that screen again. Then on the left hand side we've got quick navigation options where it's our favorite places. In this case it's our documents, desktops, homes and pictures. And we've got our trash. Then I already have a disk loaded on the system, so I'm going to go ahead and just unmount it because we will mount it at a later stage. So it asks us to unmount it. We need to add the root password. So in my case, I'm just going to add it there. It's Linux, all lowercase. I'll hit authenticate and it should unmount it shortly. There we go. It's already unmounted at the top. Let's see again. There we go. It's just had to refresh the window. So now it's out. Alright, and then at other locations, what do we have there? At other locations, we've got our main drive. So our main drive here is our SDA drive and our main partition. So over here we've got the list of all the FHS, the file hierarchy system. And you will note on this, there is a folder with a little X on this. We'll get into more detail a little later, but for now just notice X. This shows us that we are not able to access this folder because it belongs to a user which has not granted us permission to view the folder. Then let's go back to home. Home is where we saw our current user and all the listed users will be here. And if you have access, you will be able to view their folders, or they will also have a X on them. Let's open up Tux and let's open up desktop just to see that's where we were at the back, at the last stage. Great, so that's just navigating through our file explorer. So let's close this down. So what other options do we have? Here we've got our applications again, and we've got our text editor, we've got our graphics, which has got a basic image viewer. Then we've got Firefox already loaded with a mail client. And then we've got our Office where we can start producing basic documents. Then we've got our video player, and you've got a few video functionalities you can use, which is Browsero. And we've got our system tools. With our system tools, we've got our GNOME configuration editor where you can make some changes to your GNOME environment. Some network handy tools. Let's quickly open up that. Here it gives you some option of what interfaces you have and your current IP configuration within this. Your current traffic stats on this. And then we've got a few good options. We've got our ping, which we can run from here. We've got netstat, traceroute, port scan, lookup, finger, and your whois, should you like to look up domains. Our system is not connected to the internet, so we will not get any response when we do this. Just a few handy features for network administrators. Let's close this down. Let's go to applications. And system tools again. Then we've got our package updater. Our package updater, should we have an active subscription with Linux? I read it too quickly, sorry for that. Should we have an active subscription with Linux, with SUSE Linux, then we will be able to see our latest package or updates here. So we're not connected to the internet and this is not a registered system yet. So click OK. Let's go to applications again, and then we've got our settings menu. Let's quickly go into our settings. What do we have here as options? We can change the background, look at notifications, and then let's look at privacy. Let's quickly make a change to this, so please follow me. Let's open up privacy. You only have to click once. Then there's a screen lock option. This is always good to keep this on to keep your systems safe from unauthorized access. But for our training, we don't need to log in and keep our systems safe because we have a very limited user at this stage. So let's open this up and go change the automatic screen lock to off. So now it will not lock off our user even though the screensaver might kick in. So let's get the back button there. Just to show this again, go to privacy, screen lock, automatic screen lock and switch off, and then just hit the X button and go back. Alright. Then let's look at our displays. This will show us a list of all displays. Once you click on a display, this is where you can change your current resolution. So I'm going to change this to a more comfortable view for this training. That should be 1024 by 768. And I'm just going to apply that. And this should be adequate for most of the functions we're going to do within this server. And it's going to ask you to either keep the settings. Should you not hit keep changes, it will revert back to the previous settings automatically. So I'm going to hit change, keep changes. Great. Let's go back. You can do some keyboard settings, mouse settings. You can look at your network setups, power functionalities, printers, sound, and should you use to have, if you have a touchscreen, you can change that settings. And then on system, we've got where you can change your date and time, details, package sources, sharing options. For example, screen sharing, where you have to enable your VNC server. Then other universal access. Let's look at users quickly. This is where you can see your current users. To make changes to this user, you need to unlock this first, and then you can start adding users. So I'm just going to unlock it for this function. Let's hit unlock. It's going to ask us for a root password. In this case, we know what it is. It's called Linux, and we hit authenticate. Now we can add users. You'll see that it's created. We're not going to make any changes at this stage, so let's just click and lock it again. So this closes the authentication window for the root user. Let's hit the back button. So what else do we have? And then we have YAST. YAST stands for yet another setup tool. So let's open up YAST. To open up YAST, we can't just make changes to the system because we are not authorized. So we need to know the password for the root user. The password for the root user is Linux. So we're going to type in Linux there and click continue. So now it will open up YAST. YAST is a very powerful tool, and this is also what majorly differentiates SUSE Linux from other distributions like CentOS, Red Hat, and so forth. They have created a utility which is much easier to manage your system. Now this is called the YAST 2 version. This is the graphical version of YAST. We will not be using this version to make changes to our system in the future. We will be using the ncurses version, which is normal YAST, and it runs within command line. So this should be, I believe, the second last time you should see this screen. After this, we will only be navigating through the command line version. Everybody can read icons, but I feel it's more practical to work with the command line version. Okay, so there's a whole lot of settings in here. We're not going to make any changes at this stage, but you can go and search for any specifically in here to make specific changes to your system. Very, very useful, handy, and easy to navigate. So let's close down this window. So that's the end of our settings window. So let's close this down. Let's go back to applications. So what else do we have? We had our system tools, and then we've got our terminal. Now our terminal, we're going to use quite a bit. So once you click on terminal, this is where we will be running all our commands throughout the training. So you can close that down. We'll get to that a little later. Let's go back to applications. Let's go back to our system tools. Let's go back to our terminal. This time I would like to add my terminal to my desktop. Let's just first do that, to my desktop. Let's see where it is. Oh, trust and launch, there we go. Just had to authorize that first, and now we've got our terminal on our screen. Let's go back to applications, and we go to system tools again. There we've got our YAST, the direct access to YAST instead of going through settings. Then we've got our utilities. In utilities, we've got an archive manager, we've got a character map, a keyboard special character map. Then help. Help is always important, especially if you are new to Linux. You've got time to go through the complete help menu, and whenever you struggle, just open up the help menu by either pressing F1 or whenever you see the option menu on the top left hand side, and choose help. Let's close that down. Go back to utilities. Then we've got your image view again, and then system monitor. This is quite handy. In our system monitor, we've got our processes first off. So let's open up a larger view of our processes. No, that's not what I wanted to do. Just going to make it smaller again. Let's click on any of the processes. So here you can end processes which was started by the user tux, not by the root user. And you can end these processes from here. Just be careful on which processes you end for. They can cause your user to hang up, or some functions not to work. Should you wish to get more information on this specific user or process, you can click the little button at the bottom right. Then it will give you more information on the specific process. Let's close that down. Or you can right click on the process and you can say stop, continue, end. You can kill the process unsafely. You can change the priority of the specific process. You can look at memory maps, and you can look at the properties. The properties exactly the same as the little button at the bottom right. Great. Then at the top, we've got our resources. In our resources, we can have a look at our CPU history. In this case, we have a single CPU, and each CPU will be noted down here, and it will have its own little graphical bar running alongside one another. Then we've got our memory usage on this. On this specific system, we've got 768 gigs of RAM allocated, and we have been utilizing 520 megabits in this case. We've got 1 gig of swap space allocated to this specific system. Now, this is whenever we run out of memory, we utilize the disk space to assist with processing requests. And this is not much, 1 gig is not much, but usually it's adequate for this type of work that we're going to do. So this uses physical space on our hard drive, and we have a separate partition allocated for our swap space. Then if we look at our network history, this will give us stats on our current network load, and will give us a little bit of history, as you can see running through here. And then lastly, let's look at our file systems. As you can see, our mounted volume is under dev/sda2. We're running a ext4 file system type for our root portion, and also the total amount of space for this volume is 9.4 gigs, actually 10 gigabytes, and how much we have utilized of this space already. So let's close this down. Then what else do we have to show? Let's have a look at our applications again, and then favorites. In favorites, we have all of these already listed for us, our Explorer. So let's go to utilities and add tools and add our terminal to favorite and see what happens. We right click on terminal and we say add to favorites. Now this is not the only space where favorites appear. I'm going to show you here. Favorites, and now I've got on my terminal here. Whenever you go to applications, you go to your activities overview. You will see I've got now a terminal in here as well, which is a quicker access to my terminal. So to access this screen, you can just hit your Windows button on your keyboard. Just hitting my Windows button between your Control and Alt. There's a Windows button on most computers, and it will bring up the activities overview a lot easier. On the right hand side, we've got your different workspaces where you can perform different activities. You've got your search option at the top. It's a lot quicker to access your search functionality to search throughout your systems. And then here at the bottom, we've got a list of all the applications. So you can search for all your running or your available applications on the machine. Currently it's listed to frequent. You can change it to everything should you wish to go through everything. Alright, so let's just close down this a bit. There we go. Then we've got a quick navigation spot called Places. We can quickly navigate to our computer folder should we like to go there. So this helps quite a bit to quickly navigate throughout our system by just a click of a button. Then here at the number 1, here we've got our workspaces again. So I'm going to open up a terminal on my first workspace to show you the difference. Then I'm going to change to workspace 2, where I can maybe browse on a different window. So I can have different workspaces performing different functions on the same system. Another way to access these workspaces is by pressing either go to Applications and Activities Overview, or you can press the Windows button and you can select your workspace you'd like to continue with. Okay. So then let's close this down. Let's go to my other workspace and just close that down too. Great. Then let's have a look at our date and time. Again, we have our notifications bar here and a quick access to our calendar. And you will note on my specific one, I can now safely unplug my DVD writer or ROM because I have ejected the disk in there. Okay, we can disregard the notification by clicking the X. Then we end up with our on button at the bottom right. In our on button, we can change our volume, should it be activated. Then we've got our user. When we click on our current user, we've got options of either logging out, complete log off the user, or we can go change settings for this user. So again, we're at this space where we can manage our users, and we cannot change anything until we've unlocked this Windows and authenticated this with a superior user with the right access. In this case, root. We will not be doing that. Let's close that down. Let's go back to our button at the bottom right. Then we've got a little tools icon here. Now this tools takes us to our all settings page where we've got access to everything again to quickly navigate to what we want to do, what we want to change on our system, to change our look, feel or behavior, or even add printers for that matter. So let's quickly close that down. Let's click on that button again. Then we've got our lock button. This just locks our current session. Let's do that. So it's locked. Once I move my mouse or create a key on the keyboard, it will ask us to authenticate to log in again. So now we can log in as Linux with Linux password again. Hit enter and we are back. I'm going to hit on the start button again. And then here we can manage our power status of our machine. So we can either power off the machine automatically, or we can restart the machine, or we can hit cancel. Once we want to power off, it will ask us to authenticate first, because this user does not have the right privileges to maintain the power functionalities. In this case, it will be root and the password. So just hit cancel. We're not going to switch off the system right now. So that brings us to the end of our GUI navigation. You can, at your own time, go and play with this GUI navigation. that gives you a very familiar feel when you work with this. It's got very similar functionalities that we're all used to. So this is quite handy to have the GUI enabled on our SUSE Linux Enterprise server. But again, ensure that it's authorized with your security teams before you do so. Great. This was quite a mouthful. I'm just going to take a sip of water. So this brings us to the end of today's session. We've got a few moments to answer some questions. Please keep it topical. Those of you who are done, you're welcome to leave and meet up with me tomorrow, same time, same place. For those questions that are coming in, and they might be longer technical questions, you should please mail us on suze@sabtech.com. My name is Jaco Forster, and I thank you for your time today. Goodbye.